So who can tell me how would you move Mount Fuji? The biggest mountain, right? This marker is not the best, but it is what it is. How would you move it? Any good ideas?
I bring you a picture.
I'm sorry?
I bring you a picture.
Bring a picture? We have a picture, it's right here, right? How would we move that?
A little bit of dirt at a time.
How?
A little bit of dirt at a time.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Global warming. That's not a new thing.
Now you're asking me a question? How would you move Mount Fuji?
Words failing.
Not even Gurdana can help us, right? It's pretty sad, because this is kind of stuff that people used to bring up in interviews. Companies used to ask these kind of questions in interviews. They say people with best answers would be the most creative thinkers, like brain teasers. Like nobody can come up with a good answer. Whatever you say, it's either wrong or right, depending on the point of view, right? But luckily, or maybe not so much, those cartoons are gone, even though many books have been written on them. And what did companies do? They threw these books away along with their Blackberries. and they what they do? They innovate, because that's what tech companies do, right? They innovate. And they brought in whiteboarding. Well, sometimes it feels like waterboarding when you're there for 5-6 hours in front of a whiteboard and trying to solve a coding problem. So what did they do now? So they put you in front of a whiteboard, right? Apple white, shiny, glossy whiteboard. And sometimes you can get a marker. Look at this, more than one. So they give you a marker, put you in front of a whiteboard, and they ask you to solve a coding problem. That sounds easy. We're all developers, right? We write code. The problem is the problems you get on the whiteboard to solve, it's not a business problem that you try to solve a day, every day at work. Like the problems like write a web service or something like that. It's more of along the lines, you have a sorted array of zeros and ones and you need to find the fifth element in the array or something like that. Something that you would not necessarily do every day, but something that you really need to understand the computer science concepts. So that's a little bit different. And no matter what what kind of job you're looking for, whether it's a startup or maybe Fortune 500, you want to work for Slack, or Xamarin, or Amazon, Google, Microsoft. Maybe you want to try that tasty food at Google, right? You want to taste that? Sushi is good, I hear my wife says. You want to be the hot startup, become a millionaire? Well, you got to show them what you got for our whiteboard. So that's what we're here. We need to figure out how to crack these coding interviews, how to be able to do well on a whiteboard. I had a luck to interview with so many companies like Amazon, Google, Microsoft. I changed like 9 companies in 12 years. So I've done a lot of interviewing and I figured it would be nice to share that with people, to tell everybody else who hasn't had that luck to interview with these companies and work for them. I was at Google. I even went through a program where they coached us how to interview. And now with Microsoft, I interview other people as well. So I want to share that with you because I'm from Orlando. I came last night actually from Redmond just for this, to help you guys get a job. And I mentioned earlier, we're hiring because I want you guys to do well there. I don't want you to show up and then don't fulfill the expectations of everybody, right? When they fly to Redmond, they spend a lot of money for you to go there, or wherever you want to go, Boston or Silicon Valley. We all need to do well, and I would love to see you all succeed. And that's why I want to share everything that I have and know from as an insider for you to get there. So as you can see, my name is Slobo, and all the slides are going to be on my blog, developer@heart.com. And you can follow me on Slobo80 and tweet something interesting, I'll retweet it. And if you have any questions later on, if you don't remember, feel free to email me anytime. I'll respond right away. And this is a big topic, right? So I don't think I can cover everything. So I'll be very happy to spend time with you after the talk, maybe during lunch or later. Because I came here for you guys. I'm a developer. I was here last year, and a lot of you probably remember me. I used to be a member of the board on OneTug, and I helped organize the code camp. So I came here for you guys, and let's just have a good conversation and make it really valuable to everybody. So, there are a few things I would like you to take away, if nothing else. Oh yeah, the most important thing, right? Brought to you by courtesy of Microsoft. Everything I say here is my own opinion. Microsoft does not approve this message, okay? Whatever I say, they don't approve that. So, keep that in mind. Because they're getting up lawsuits. They don't need any more. Yeah, so 3 things I would like to take away, if nothing else. And I kind of tried to create an acronym to remember these in that. You gotta be able to, you gotta practice many problems. That's number 1, right? Practice, practice, practice. If you ever played sports, you know that there's no way around it. It's not the same as going to work from 9 to 5. That's not practicing. That's playing the game, right? Practicing is what happens off the court. And you gotta be able to write the correct code. When I say correct code, I mean every semicolon counts. Not pseudocode. Don't show up for an interview writing pseudocode. That's not code. That's pseudocode. And the third thing, computer science fundamentals. Some of you went to school, to college, you learned it, some of you didn't. Some of you learned on your own, some of you didn't. Without those, it's gonna be hard. Or should I say impossible? You gotta be really lucky. I'm not, so I don't know, hopefully some of you are. So let's just dig into those individually and see what that actually means. Because this is very broad and general, this doesn't mean too much, right, until we analyze those. Let's then start with what you really need to know. What computer science fundamentals? So if you never took these classes in school, like data structures, algorithms, discrete math, probability, if you haven't taken those classes, there is still hope. You can go to online classes. There's a bunch of online classes from big schools. They offer really good material that you can catch up on. And even if you did and you maybe forgot, you should refresh your knowledge and memory. So for instance, data structures. Do you know how data structures work? Heap, stack, queues, linked lists. What is the runtime? Where would you use heap? What is that good for? What kind of problem solves? Stack. Can you implement stack? Can you implement it on the whiteboard? How would you figure out multi-threading on a stack? Keep those in mind. Cache table, when do you use that? Linked list, what type of algorithms? Single linked list, double linked list. How would you find a typical problem? You have a linked list. How would you find the middle of the linked list? Can you do that? That would be an interesting problem. Binary arithmetic, shift right, shift left. Do you know those, how they work, what they do? XOR, or, big math. You don't do those anymore with the high-level languages, right? But that's what you're going to be asked in the interview. I don't remember last time I used the binary arithmetic, but on the interview, that's something you need to know. Recursion, dynamic programming. We are all told not to use recursion unless you have to. But in an interview, you must know it, even though you don't use it for day-to-day job, right? Can you implement a typical problem? Find the fifth smallest element in a binary tree using recursion. Can you do that on a whiteboard? No Visual Studio, no Google. I know you Google Stack Overflow developers. That's all gone. It's the marker whiteboard and you. So those are the kind of problems you can expect. And obviously trees and graphs, binary tree, binary search tree, depth first search, breadth first search. Those concepts are very important. Then multi-threading, everybody does multi-threading, but do you understand how semaphores work? Locks, deadlocks, how to prevent deadlocks. Those are critical concepts. You need to know to implement and also explain. And then pathfinding, these are, oh man, these problems I always get. When you go for an interview, you typically have between 5 to 6. And one of them is going to hit you, right? traveling salesman problem, or shortest path, A star. If you've done gaming, you probably hit some of those. But not everybody writes games, not everybody's lucky, right? So those are the problems you need to learn. You don't see them very often in work. And then, typical, external search, insertion search, quick sort, merge sort, insertion sort, right? Those are the ones. I had one question, one guy asked me, it was a couple of years ago at Microsoft. He asked me, we have one gig of memory, and we have a bunch of numbers. Like he said, I think it was like a 12 billion numbers. How would you sort that? Yeah. So if you don't know external sort, you're dead, right? You gotta know how that works. What about if you have 100 numbers? Which sort do you use? Quick sort? Merge? It doesn't really matter. They're all about the same. So you can just throw anything over there. But you gotta tell you why you chose that. You can't just say, I would use quick sort and let's move on, I have the right answer. It's not like ABC, right? You gotta explain yourself. Being quiet in the interview is not good. Quiet means you don't know. And probability, geometry. One of the questions I got for the geometry is, he drew like this. Here. Y-axis, x-axis. Find the closest point and write the algorithm. So you gotta understand geometry, right? So that's what you need to know. If any of that what I mentioned is foreign to you, then you need to refresh on your fundamentals. And then we come to the whiteboard, also known as waterboard. So no pseudocode. I already said that. You need to be able to write correct code. I interviewed one guy, and he started writing code. And I'm like, okay, cool. This is JavaScript. And then he kept writing. Man, this is not JavaScript. It looks like C#. And then it's like a couple more lines. I'm like, I have no clue what he's writing. So I have to ask him, what language is this? Because I couldn't understand. And then he's like, well, this is JavaScript. I'm like, oh, okay. Fail. Now you gotta write the correct code. You choose the language that you're familiar with. And it doesn't matter whether you interview with Amazon and you write C#, that applies, or with Google, who is famous for Java and C++. I interviewed with Google a couple times, and C# were perfectly fine. So the language doesn't matter. Just don't use something like Perl and stuff like that. Don't try to go out there. Like C++, Java, C#, I don't think Swift is there yet, but yeah, those typical languages that we mostly know, everybody knows one of those. Right? So those are the languages you need to be able to correctly write without Stack Overflow, without Google, without Visual Studio, no assistance, just you, whiteboard, and a marker. And then the last thing, practicing. Practice, practice, practice. But it's not about practicing without any purpose or practicing without knowing, without structure. First thing you need to do is buy a whiteboard. If you don't have a whiteboard at home, buy one. It's not the same taking Visual Studio and writing code. That's not practicing. It's not the same as writing on a paper. It's very different when you're standing here and the guy's standing over there and he's asking you to write stuff. Your adrenaline is high, you're stressed out, and my handwriting sucks. It sucks. I had to first learn how to write legibly. Like I'm at the interview, I'm like shaking, like I was freaking out, and then I have to write something that he can read, right? So you need to be able to do that on a whiteboard. It's very different when you're typing. And then the second thing is, what problems do you practice? Like, you can Google many problems, but are you doing the right stuff? Are you practicing the right problems? It's like you're preparing for a game, but you need to practice the shots that you expect to be able to execute in the game, right? So that's where a good book is important. And I can recommend one book. Anybody can guess a title? Who knows the best book? Come on. Yeah, John, come on, hit me.
Cracking the coding interview.
There you go.
You know why I know that? Because I'm watching Google, Amazon like a hawk, and it's always number one.
You know what? It's not fair, but I have to. I have to do it. I have to give you this Windows Ninja Cat sticker. This is like a collector's item. Can you pass that, please? We got one more. So, oh yeah, by the way, when we finish this, I'll need a volunteer. I'll need a volunteer for somebody to do whiteboarding, and that will be the prize for that person. Yeah, so I mentioned this is a collector's item. I can give you a story later at lunch if you're interested. But cracking coding interviews is probably the best. I got that, and if you look it up, you will see why it's the best. It's really structured well, it has the problems that you need, and we'll come back to that later more, but it has the classes of the problems, and that's critical. It's not about, like if you're practicing basketball, right, and you're just shooting free throw, you can shoot that for like a million times, but unless you try other stuff, you're not gonna get the breadth of the problems. With this book, you will. And then you gotta solve them with the whiteboard. You gotta take the book, you have a whiteboard, and solve them on the whiteboard. And the best way to practice is to find a sparring partner. You want to play any sport, it's good to have somebody to carry you, right, to push you, right? I play tennis, and I always look for somebody who's better than me, because you learn from those people. You learn from those. So you're like, yeah, who's going to do it with me? There's how many of us in this room? Just ask somebody who wants to work with you. Like get together, go to the library, go somewhere, go to somebody's house, get a whiteboard. Even if you don't want to interview, it's good for you to practice, to see how other people are thinking. And I was fortunate enough when I was at Google temporarily, because we got a certain contract, a limit, and then we were all trying to get a job. So we got approached by Google people, and also we were all looking for a job. And what was good about that is that we had like 1 hour sessions. So we were all get together in the room, say put one guy on the whiteboard and ask a question, and then he would try to solve that. And then you look at his thought process. He's solving that very differently than I am. That's not a bad idea. So and then you put multiple people in the room, and everybody has their own approach of solving it. And that's important, because if you give me a problem today, I'll solve it. In a month, I'll solve it probably the same way. That's not growth. That's stagnation. If I put you to solve a problem, you will do it one way. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. You will solve it in a different way. And then, when you absorb all that, then you become better. Because when you show up for the interview, when I ask you, how would you find the first one in a sorted array of zeros and ones? You will say, well, I will probably maybe walk the array from 0 until I find the first. Yeah, that's a right solution, but that's not enough. You need to provide multiple solutions to a problem. You need to show the interviewer that you can analyze multiple solutions. And to be able to do that is much easier if you work with some other people to hear their point of view. So that's why I encourage you highly to find somebody that you can work with. And if you're annually playing sports again, you gotta do it every day. You want to run a marathon, you don't start a week before marathon and just run for like 20 miles and like, yeah, I'm ready on Saturday. It doesn't work that way. You can't just skip 4 days of training because on the 5th day you will run 15 miles to make it up the previous 4. The brain is like our muscles. You need to run every day. And that's why 2-3 hours of whiteboarding every day is much more valuable than 8 hours on the 5th day. Right? And then you need to push yourself. 2-3 hours every day is not going to be enough. Remember, when you go there for an interview, you will most likely spend 6-7 hours interviewing. 6-7 hours in front of a whiteboard. You gotta be sharp focused. When you perform the best and the last. Last one is the most important. Because what's happening is first you start interviewing with these people who are maybe gonna be on your team or not, and then next to last is your manager, hiring manager. And that person not gonna waste their time on you if the previous 3-4 people did not say good stuff. If they say, like, hey, this guy's not good, the manager is not going to bother. But when the manager sees you, that's a good sign. And then the director is going to, we're already 6 hours, 5 hours into it, you're exhausted, the lunch has passed, because lunch is a working interview too, right? Like you don't, it's not like, okay, have lunch, come back in an hour. No, we're going for lunch and we're talking code. We're not taking a break. You get a bathroom break, 10 minutes, and that's it. We're not talking about your resume. Resume is irrelevant. Resume gets you to the room, but you got to perform. So, when I was practicing, I would do 2-3 hours every day, and then on Saturdays, Sundays, I would keep 7-8 hours. It's kind of like running the marathon, right? Preparing for a marathon. You run 4 to 6 miles every day, and then on that second week or whatever, you hit that 13 miles or 14 miles or whatever to push yourself a little bit, and then you recover again. And that's how the same thing with the brain. You got to do the same way. Okay. Yeah, so, I was doing all these problems, practicing. I think you probably had a similar experience in school. You've been trying to learn some new concept in math, and you're just doing these problems, and it's like, yeah, I'm getting it right because I'm doing so many of them. But then one day it just hits you. Like, you just hit it, right? Everything just falls in place. Yeah, I get it now. Like, I understand what's going on. And that's what happened to me when I realized, like, at one point, you know what? They're just different classes of problems. There's not that many, there's few of them. And the most important thing is to be able to identify the class of a problem. Once you identify the class, it's mechanics. Because every class has an algorithm and data structures that go along with it. Is it a straight problem? Is it a pathfinding problem? Linked list? Identify that correctly, and then the rest is just flowing from it. So that's easy, right? Like we need to learn and all that, but when are you ready? How do you know you're ready? You will know you're ready, and I cannot tell you it's going to take you a week or a month to prepare, or a year, or 2 years. You will just know in your heart when you feel like arrogant and cocky, and you feel like, just throw anything at me, I'll get it done. When you feel that, then you're ready. But in the meantime, you just need to practice. So, that's all for the slides. And now the best part, why we're all here, to write some code, right? So, who is the volunteer? I brought my wife. You're a volunteer? Nice! Because I was going to say, I have my wife here, but I want you to spare her the misery, so.
Thank you.
Cool. So we're just going to write some code now, and I'm going to put up a problem. Carlos, great. I'm Slobo, by the way. Slobo? My name is Slobo. Yeah. Okay, cool. That was easier. I thought I was going to have to drag somebody out.
I'm going to lose probably, but you can always try.
Nobody can fail here. So we have a problem here. We have a solid array of zeros and ones. And by the way, this is a problem I had on the interview. I felt like it was a good one. So I also asked that another guy last week when I was interviewing him. And we need to write a method that returns the position of the first one. How would you go about that?
Using what language?
Oh, any language you want. It's your choice.
First one is where the one is. First it's here.
Okay.
Is that what you mean?
Can you ask me a question?
Great question. When you say the first one, do you mean the first one list, and
It's an array.
it's an array of just bits, 1 and 0.
Right.
Bit data type.
The interview is never going to trick you. We're not here to trick people. We want to see how you think. So, like, if you want to take a little break, so we can just like go step by step. So when an interview asks you a question, the worst thing you can do is jump on the board and start writing. Do you understand the problem first? The best way is to repeat the problem. So when I ask you this, what I would like you to do is to repeat the problem for 2 reasons. First, you're giving yourself a buying time to think about it. And the second is you're confirming that you understood what I asked. And then after that, you should ask for clarifying questions. Like ask for clarifying questions. What are we talking about? Like I said an array, you started with a list, right?
Fair.
Yeah, that's the thing. So, and then you tell me, okay, this is the one approach. Whatever comes to your mind first. And typically it's going to come brute force, right? We're going to start, okay, jump in. But that's most likely not the correct one I want to see. But you should mention that, even though you're not going to implement. Then you say, okay, that's probably not what you're looking for. But there's another way I can do it. And then you slowly bind yourself time while you're thinking about it. Every problem has more than one solution. And if you just approach with one solution, that's not good. We want people who can think about different approaches, analyze the approaches, says pros and cons, and then when we decide which we're going to implement, then we get to the whiteboard. So spend 2 minutes asking the questions, understanding the problem. You know very well in business problems when you're work solving, it's not like customer asks you to create a web service that does something, you just jump on the code and start coding. No, you just ask a million questions, requirements. The same thing with this, right? Like you gotta understand what they want. You may build a solution they want, but it may not be the right solution. So that's the first thing. Okay, so let's get back to it now and resume where you are.
So, does it have to be this way, or can we implement it a different way?
But what's the easiest way for you to do it?
You ask me with a list, because it's an array. You can sort an array, just like.
Okay, so we need to implement a method that takes an array and returns it first, right? So what does your method take?
Yeah, they just told me to stop and talk to you.
Okay, good. No, that's fine. That's good. You gotta explain. The worst thing you can do is assume. Don't assume anything and be quiet. If you're quiet, I don't know whether you don't know or you're thinking. And if I don't know what you don't know or you're thinking, it's negative. Because there's 2 things in the interview. The interviewer needs to provide back to the hiring manager. Hire, no hire. One of those 2. If you're uncertain, it's no hire. The companies would rather pass on a great candidate than hire the wrong one. They would rather lose on a great candidate than hire the wrong one. If I have any doubts, or just a little bit of a doubt, it's no hire.
There's one of those.
No, go ahead. Okay, while you keep doing that, I'll just talk a little bit, so because we don't have that much time, I want to get to everything.
Alright.
Typically, the way the interview starts is you get an easy problem, and then you may feel like, oh man, I'm gonna nail this. But that's called a warm-up, because they want to warm you up. And a lot of times they'll even, like the nicer one's gonna say, how's your trip? Did you have a good time? Did you do some sightseeing? That's not there for chit-chat. That's there to put you at ease. They see you're a bit nervous, they try to put you at ease. So don't think that doesn't count. Everything counts. Once you shake hands, get in the room, everything counts. What you say. You gotta be nice, you gotta be polite, you gotta be modest, right? Don't be cocky. You gotta be cocky inside, but not project it.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, go ahead.
Can you tell us through what he's doing? Because I can't see. Real quick, what-
Well, he's trying to implement the method that takes in a bit array.
Okay.
That's what he's writing. I wish we had a bigger room. Like a John Papa crowd. Uh, so once you get that warm-up thing, then you can start building on top of this. So this is easy problem to solve, what you see right now. But then I can throw in some things, right, to make it more complicated. So what if this was not zero and let's say it's not sorted array and it's not zero at once, and you need to find the first element, first letter A. So see, I can build on top of it depending how good you are, how far we can go, because I have 30 minutes. In 30 minutes we need to see whether you can think, whether you can reason and solve it correctly. So we can keep building on top of a single problem. First value, so okay, so you set, this is, so we take, I'm sorry? Yeah, explain what you're doing.
Just taking the array, variable C#, and take the first element.
But we want to return the position of the first one.
Ah, the position.
Yeah.
I understand that part.
So this is another pivotal point in the interview. He asked for a question, clarified what he misunderstood. I gave him a hint. Is he able to take my hint and go back on track? Is he capable of doing that? So that's what we look for. So like, for instance, I have a sheet here that I used last week in the interview. So those are the questions that I have. Like, does he analyze the problem before trying to solve it? Can he write the correct code? Can he come back, take my hint and come back and solve the problem? Can we get back on track? So those are things I'm looking for.
So if we misunderstood the problem, we didn't ask the question, we actually ended up coding something that wasn't a solution. Is there something a second chance if you need to clarify saying, oh, that's not what I was asking for, here's the same problem? Or is that a negative that basically you just didn't understand it at all?
If you don't misunderstand the problems, like your work, right? How many times you misunderstood what customer wanted, and then you go and
Yeah, so right now, he gave you the actual number, which is your information.
Right.
So that was a misunderstanding. That's the problem.
so that's okay. It's okay if we can go back on track with clarification. So here we are looking at the first element in an array. I think that's another thing. Okay, yeah. So no, that's good. That's good. That's fine. I don't expect you to do practice for it. Like if you would do this in an interview, it probably would not be good.
So, would it be okay, or would you look kind of like, were confused if you wrote like 0001111, just to kind of clarify, say, you know, is this what you're talking about with the sorted array?
Yeah, that's good. I mean, you should, whatever helps you reason about it and analyze the problem. Draw pictures, arrays. Another good approach is, like if the problem is overwhelming, try to narrow it down. Like let's say we have infinite number. It's hard to reason about infinite. What if I have, let me just try to reason about if I have a 5 numbers. You know, can I solve the problem with 5? Okay, if I can do it 5 first, then it's a lot easier to expand that to infinite, right? So you gotta narrow it down. Okay, so that's fine. Like the syntax, let's just move beyond the syntax. Like typically what I see people do is in this, come up with a brute force solution. Let's walk the array one element at a time until we hit the first one. And let's say we did that. Then my question would be, what's the runtime of that algorithm? What is the big O? Linear, right? Big O n, right? Is that good? It's not n squared. or 2 to the end. So it depends on the perspective. But so the next question is, can we do better? If I ask, can we do better? We always can do better. So don't even, just say yes and then think about it. So we can always do better. Quantum computing is around the corner. Okay, so let's say we can do better than linear. How would we go about that? That's the next question, right? How would you go about that? So this is, again, seems like we're at the beginning where we started. How do we do it again? So what is the key word here?
Sorted.
Sorted. Who has an idea now?
Binary search?
Binary search. Okay, now we're going back. Binary search. Do you understand the binary search? How does binary search work? If you do, can you implement that on the whiteboard without any assistance? Okay. Let-
that for you though.
Exactly. But I didn't say you cannot use array.index. You could have done that, array.index, one line of code. And you said, there it is. Now it's perfect. I understand you know C#. But you didn't do that. You didn't even propose that. So then you started doing walking the array one by one, linear runtime, right? Obviously it's not a great solution, and I don't want to see that in the code. But anyway, so it's binary search now, that's where we are at. So how do you implement binary search? Recursively. Do you understand recursion? So you see how many concepts we're hitting here. Like, I'm going to get a pretty good idea of your computer science fundamental skills. And can you walk through the problem? Can you solve it?
Is that always going to be the case? Are you always going to have an interview where the interviewer will always know computer science methodology and efficiency and be going?
The interviewer?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, like as I said, this is like, should be like a 3-day workshop. Seriously, guys, this is a 3-day workshop. Because what we're covering now is how to prepare and how to interview. We're not talking about how to get an interview. Because most of us can't just go over there and get an interview with Google, right? They're not going to call you. And the second thing we're not talking about is how to accept the job offer, because that's a big part. We can talk about that at lunch. But anyways, so going back, what was your original question? Sorry.
It's okay. I was just curious to. It's okay to prepare, for computer science techniques and
Yeah.
implementing binary search from your head.
Yeah.
But are you always going to have a use case for it? You're doing higher level languages and you have already that stuff written. You're able to recognize the base algorithm, but at the end of the day, a real world scenario would probably, in my opinion, would be with a higher level language. There would be, I'm not doing C++, and I'm not doing
You're not writing device drivers.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's a valid question, a valid concern. But unfortunately, you don't ask questions, they ask questions, so you just gotta do what they ask.
You're not interviewing me right now.
No. Yeah, exactly. No, I'm glad you're bringing that up because this one guy interviewed, asked me that. He said, "How?" Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I mean, I was just gonna say, you can practice batting and never learn how to hit a curveball and hope that they just don't throw the curveball. Or you can master hitting the curveball, and then whatever else they throw at you will be
You're not
cake.
always going to get all the interviews that you go for. Because that's part of life. Because not everybody has the same caliber that you are.
Now, looking at your thought process and how you answer your question, not, do you have your perfect answer out there? Will it, come to a real problem?
Do they have, and that's great, but do they have the expertise to actually be able to test you the way that you can actually test it?
So here's how that works. You're not a random person interviewing this candidate. You go to interview training. And then, before every interview, the interview team gets together with the hiring manager and decide, you're going to be trying to probe on this specific area. You're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to do that. Go prepare for that. You got to prepare. It's not like this list, it's not like I was given this. I had to go prepare, find the problem, implement myself, do a little bit of research, right?
Yeah, I came in blind, so.
Exactly, that's the point. That's why you're going to, before that 3 months, practice. Because you don't know what's going to show up. I know what I'm going to ask. I'm going to ask you one problem. I can't ask you a linked list because I didn't prepare for that. I need practice. But you did. You practice linked lists, heaps, and job description. Job description doesn't say that. You gotta practice everything. Yeah. So that's why it's not gonna happen in one day, maybe not even in a week. For me, I was practicing for 3 months, 2 years in a row, and finally I was able to do it. You know, so some people are smarter, you don't need that much time. Some people need more time, but until you feel your gut feeling is that you're confident that you can go there and nail it, you gotta practice. So yeah, so the interview team prepares on their own. So they prepare. They don't just walk out there and just like, let me throw this on the board. It's not like that. It's not random.
So I got a comment. So in this one, it's interesting because the way you would think about this is where we're talking about introducing a small subset. It helps if you actually start thinking like a long, big subset. So what a general problem is you have a million database records. You want to find one that matters.
And that's a good point because a lot of times.
Can you restate the question? No, what he said.
Oh, we just set up and.
Yeah, so what I was trying to state was that earlier the point was to try to imagine a small subset, and it helps to get you an idea of how to solve it. But once you do have the idea, it would be good if you try to scale it up. Say, let's say I have a million database records. You want to find a record, it's sorted somehow. You want to find a record pertinent to that. The search of a million database records in linear fashion, it impacts your end user, whoever is defined, it's impacted them. So maybe it will help if you scale your problem out as well to come up with a better solution. I mean, you start with the brute force and then maybe you think about scaling up and say, what is the better way of putting this into practice? And you say, best way, maybe scaling the problem up.
The opposite approach, like in calculus, for example, you have derivative and you have an anti.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, so we don't have too much time left. Yeah, go ahead.
If I'm taking my driver's test, I go down to the police station or whatever I'm taking it, I can take that test, I fail it today, I go back tomorrow, I take it again, I can take it for the rest of the year until I finally pass and get my driver's license, right?
Right.
So in this situation, do you get like one shot at it, 2 shots at it, or like, you say when you feel like you're ready, well, if I feel like I'm ready and I get shot down, do I ever get a second chance? This is the question.
Most people are going to get shot down in the first try. That's been my experience and also what I've heard from the interviewers and also other friends that interview. So I would just not be disappointed the first time failing and look at that as a learning experience. It's very stressful. Let's say you're flying to Silicon Valley. They fly you over there. You're stressed out. You're already skipping work. Maybe you lied to your manager that you're sick because you don't want to do it. So you're over there. It's a new city. You rent. They give you a rental car. You don't want to rack it. You go over there and they put you in front of a whiteboard. You're freaking out. Obviously, you can't do that well. But imagine next month. You do repeat the same thing again. How better you feel? You already know where you're flying. Everything is already been behind you. You're more comfortable. So I would take it first time as a practice. Second time, I better do well. And different companies have different policies. So I accepted the job for Microsoft in May last year. And then it was like, I don't know, let's say May 5th. May 7th, I get an email from a recruiter from Microsoft. Do you want to interview with us? I'm like, I just did 2 days ago, I accepted the job or accepted an offer. I'm like, oh, okay. Then 3 days later, another recruiter calls me from a different team with Microsoft. Do you want to interview with us? I'm like, guys, I already accepted. I just haven't changed on my LinkedIn because I'm still kind of employed with these things. So that's how Microsoft works. They're completely decentralized. They don't have a central database. So in your case, you can interview every day. However, with Google, they have one database. Yes. Interview with them 2 years ago. They say thank you, but no thank you. I went home and they called me for a year. So once a year with Google, you can interview. So,
Lockheed Martin does the same thing.
very good. So every company is different. And it's good, like you can do back to back. You can do Lockheed one day, Google another, Microsoft the third day. That's good practice, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, so you can do different things. Okay, since we're running out of time, I want to cover one more thing. Thank you for your time, and here's the sticker. I just want to mention one more thing. There are two types of questions you're going to get in an interview. So you're going to have 4 to 6 interviews. You're going to get two types. One that we just saw, writing the code on the board, and the second one is going to be system design. And that should feel everybody better, right? Because we all do like system design, we do net services, mobile apps, whatever. That's easy. And this is one of the questions I got. A building has 3 elevators, design a system. Let's just cover this quickly. What would you add? How do you start with this?
How big is the building?
That's a good question. I don't have time to go through this. I'm just going to tell you 5 things. Ask 5 whys.
Oh.
Why are we doing this? Why do we need elevators to begin with?
So it's short,
Who is going to use these elevators? Is this a door? Is this a hospital? Where is it going to
Where did that?
be? Where? Where is it going to be, right? What are we transporting? What? Who's going to use it? Where are we going to use it? Why are we going to use it? How are we going to use it? What's the 5th? When are we going to use it? Okay, so I think that's all I can do for this one. Again, as I said, it's like a 3-day workshop basically you can do it here. So I'll be around. I won't attend any talks in the afternoon. I'll be at the attendee party. So please feel free to stop by and talk to me. I'll be very happy. And if you have any questions now,
I know, that's my first time listening to it, so it was entertaining. I feel very curious for you guys.
And appreciate that. You said it twice. Is this yours or do you just leave it?
No, it's mine. It's mine.
you're not having